Do you like conversation on a variety of topics? Feel like no one wants to talk about the things that interest you? Tired of only hearing the same political, sports, or catastrophe talk? Yeah, we feel that way too. Join two high-functioning geeks as they discuss just about anything under the sun. We can't tell you what we'll be talking about each week because we don't know where our brains will take us. It will be an interesting conversation though, so hang on and join us. Here comes the Relentless Geekery.
During COVID, and I haven't invested in those, so I just it's not that. Let's put it this way: all that investing that I've been doing with the idea of don't worry, it will do well over the course of 3 to 5 years. I'm going to need that 3 to 5 years. Right now, I'm still way up, but I'm not ever ascending like I had been. You know what I mean? So, and I make the mistake.
Should have sold it out and moved to the beach.
That's what what's funny is I kind of don't want to do that. I don't want to be out of the market, and I don't want to arrange things trying to capture the timing of the market. Every investment book you've ever read it's impossible to do that. And especially even though I'm semi-knowledgeable and semi-canny about what's available and patterns to find and so forth, I'm nowhere near the guy with the Bloomberg terminal sitting on their desk with instant access to information. And not only instant access, but a team of analysts that are looking at every single thing about the world and saying, pork belly futures really do have an impact on, solar panels that are being produced by this company. And so I'm going to have to take the long-term view of thinking I got in early, I held on to it. Like, it's kind of funny. Everybody kind of adopts the little slogans that they hear from the people that they hang around with, if you will. And the more that I regularly take in things from the Motley Fool or Tradesmith or various other places, one of the things I really like is time in the market really matters more than timing the market. You can make big mistakes and you can go crazy and you can just doing options and anything that's based on trying to predict where the future is going to be in especially in the short term versus the long term. It's like sitting down at the casinos in Vegas and not where you've sat down and you've memorized how to be a card counter in blackjack and you get a 0.5% edge on the house. You know what I mean? There's ways of doing fundamental analysis that really let you know who are the companies that are going to do good things over the next 10 years because they are going to cure this disease or build out solar power or have better cyber crime monitoring and prevention. And I like reading those stories and I like creating that future, but that's the future, not the next quarter.
Right.
So
there are people that do that. They sit there all day, buying a little bit of this, selling some of this, in constant, but you have to sit there all day staring at, some of these people start getting edgy if they have to get up to run to the bathroom and, they're up at 6 a.m. and, it's 11 at night. They're like, well, hold on, just, 10 more minutes. I want to make sure, to get that extra 10 cents or whatever.
Yeah. It's a very different way of looking at the world that I want to get little nicks on $500 bets. And if I go up, $30 on 500 and that immediate gratification type thing, it's like some people love doing that. And if I can do that 10 times, then I don't make 30, I make 300, I make 3,000.
Right.
And I kind of get that, but it really seems like you're not building anything. You're not participating in the market. You're not giving good, smart, diligent people the money that they need, the capital they need to bring their idea to fruition. You're just kind of like a scavenger. You're picking off these little bits and you're not harming anybody necessarily. You're supplying liquidity to the market, but, and I guess there really is a skill to being able to do all those little, premonitions that say, I'm pretty sure this is going up. And so I'll put in an option. I'll do my calls and puts saying within reason, this is going to go up or down. And you can make money doing that. But way long ago, before I started to do more active investing, so much for most of my career, I bought the S&P 500 index and I let it grow. You know what I mean? The world will continue over the course of time. They have all the good charts that say that's what the world does. It does create wealth. And if you just buy the market, you'll get steady 8% a year. And it might be that, there's slight fluctuations in that. But what can I do? Sleep at night. I'm going to make 8% instead of 20%, instead of 40,
life.
60, 80%. Yes, you're not chained to your phone. Sell. You know what I mean? And the fact that I'm now willing to do that a little bit more as a career, you know what I mean? That I'm a more active investor than I ever have been. I'm really drinking in information every day and making choices and so forth. But even then, I'm not in and out of stocks. I'm picking which ones I want to be in with the idea of, this is a good story. This story is going to take a long time to play out. You know what I mean? Right. I need all 10 episodes, not one good episode.
There's humanitarian in it, not just money investment.
Honestly, it really matters to me. I have never invested in vice. I've never even invested in things where it just seems to be like the people that are making money doing this, are they really making the world better, or is it frivolous almost? Whereas I really like the idea that, like I said, if we're trying to save the world climate change wise, alternate energy sources are going to be a big part of that. And there's multiple aspects of that. You have to have better batteries. You have to have more efficient solar panels. You have to have more efficient transmission so that it's not, wow, we have a whole bunch of solar power in the middle of the desert. How do we get that to LA? How do we get that to Milwaukee? You know what I mean? Right. And so I like being able to approach that from, there's like multiple ways to win that game, and that we're going to need all those ways. Like, liquid natural gas is no matter only coming to your home. Now they have the liquid natural gas buses. And then when the federal government says we're changing everything to either, a more efficient source or a less polluting source, or actually going electric, I like that somebody already has been working on the technology that makes that possible.
Right.
And the next technology that's going to make that possible is we build a smarter grid. Somebody's doing all those monitoring devices and all the automatic switches that are going to say we'll never have a blackout like we had on the whole eastern seaboard again, because we've gotten smarter about a tree can't take out civilization. You know what I mean? We've compartmentalized and we've put in appropriate smart supports for. Wow.
It sounds like a Pixar story, doesn't it?
It really does. The first 10 minutes will be showing the Rube Goldberg machine of coincidences that had to happen, that a squirrel drops a nut, the nut hits a bear on the head, roar, he says. You know what I mean?
I can see that as a Pixar story. Some squirrel does something, the tree falls over, knocks out the eastern seaboard, and then you have all these furry animals rushing to save humanity and power back
or
up.
Kind of saying, boy, it sure is peaceful without all those humans. Maybe we should do this like clockwork, actually.
Now they mobilize
the invisible saboteurs are all the little woodchucks all around us.
Squirrel Army. Exactly. There's our next T-shirt. Squirrel Army.
Squirrel Army.
Speaking of humanitarian, did you hear Bill and Melinda are getting divorced?
Honestly, that was a bolt from the blue for me. Yeah. I don't tend to follow celebrity type things, gossipy type things, and I didn't know how well their wedding was going, except that it sure seemed to have legs. They've been married for 27 years.
Yeah.
They had children. They brought their children to adulthood. They seemed to take, I don't know, what are the signs of a successful marriage? That you do things together. And maybe some of the things they did were so high powered that there was still stress associated with it. But,
here's my wonderment though. Bill obviously is a genius. I mean, there's really no denying that. What level? Who knows for sure. But he's one of the big ones up there.
Yes.
And he obviously seems to have some autistic traits that go along with that. We've talked about that before, that a lot of smart people have autistic traits to some degree, sometimes stronger.
That's right. In order to get that level of focus that lets you do some of those things, you have to be like gifted in that way, but then it also has sometimes other consequences, maybe even a cost. Okay. Yeah.
So I wonder if she just couldn't put up with some of that anymore. Because I mean, I think there are times I have some of those, and I know Gina would attest to that. That there are just certain things that she's like, one of these days, she's just like, I know that's you, but man, it's annoying and aggravating. After a while. And I got two things with that actually. Number one, happy Star Wars Day. Which
May the 4th be with you. Exactly.
Also my anniversary. So
good for what planning? What perfect planning.
She did that. Good. That was her choice, actually.
Okay.
But I was thinking about the whole autistic thing, and I don't know where the idea came from. Maybe watching X-Files. We have all these things where they talked about the aliens and they were cloning them and all sorts. What if people who have autism are the alien hybrids? That those are the ones that they've made from the alien DNA.
It's so that X-Files did portray that well, that once in a while, in order to be really, I don't know, unemotional or obsessive or not only negative traits, in order to be able to figure out a big puzzle, you have to have something that lets your brain kick into a higher gear than most people. I think I might have mentioned this. I finished the Frankenstein series by Dean Koontz, and one of the things it portrays well is in Victor Frankenstein trying to create new men, a better part of humanity. He wants it to be, well, let's try it without emotion. And then you find out that that really is a base part of humanity, that you have to have empathy. You have to, or at least to be not just indistinguishable from human and better than human, but like to survive your own success. You know what I mean? So, and they had other aspects of that where people that have incredible focus, if what they get focused on is everything must be orderly, all of a sudden they're cleaning all the time. And I know that seems like embracing a stereotype, and that's probably how he wanted to portray it, was maybe some way to understand how people that have that have to check the stove 3 times or clean all the time, or they say certain things. And for instance, I have friends that when you say a certain reference, they have a story about that. Yeah. And no matter how many times you trigger that, they will say the same story. It's just kind of like a stimulus response thing. And that's how some of these were, is that they really had a perfect way to respond, but then they had no creativity to look for another way of responding when perfect, even that wasn't going to work because situations had changed. And so, I don't know, it was a minor, not even a minor, it was a very interesting way of him dealing with, if you have someone trying to create better humanity, exactly what would you emphasize and what would you cut out?
Right.
Instead of that we're really this wonderful, 17-layer cake, and it takes all 17 layers.
Exactly. Arguably, that's taking your 17 layers and making 17 separate people, where each one is best in one layer.
Like that.
It's funny you kind of say it that way, because on Star Wars Day, they dropped Bad Batch, which is the new Clone Wars cartoon on Star Wars.
Interesting. I didn't know that. Okay.
It was good. I mean, if you watch the old Clone Wars cartoon, this is really kind of like season 8. It takes place right at the end of episode 3. And it's about a squadron of clones who are deviants, that they had deformities, so they're different than all the rest. And it's interesting because what they really turn out to be is like the old Voltron or Battle of the Planets, where they had 5 members and each one had a certain person. You had the big strong guy, the short,
but they were specialized as opposed to being identical. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. And that's what these guys are. I mean, they literally could have been the Voltron Force. It was, the 5 characters of that the stereotypes, the big strong guy that is dumb and makes you laugh when he talks, the smart tech guy, the leader, so we watched that today. And it's interesting, like with the autism, when you have a team, if you have that one guy that can focus and do that one thing, well, now you know who does that. But then you still need that other guy that's talking to people. You need that other guy that's doing all this research. So the alien hybrids, maybe that's what they're doing.
Yeah, if it turns out that the aliens are like, let's create specialized, I don't know, they might, if the minute that they introduce the idea of a hive mind, like that's the ideas of insect kingdoms are very relegated into, these are drones and all they are is drones, and here's the queen and here's the people that make the royal jelly for the queen, and that they all kind of know their role, so almost like a human caste system, so that we really did embrace that for generations, if not thousands of years. Well, you find out that there's always deviations in each of those things, that someone needs to be able to break out of that if they show that they have multiple characteristics. And I don't know, Gattaca, there's been a number of science fiction movies that talked about that the ideal situation for humanity would be you take tests like in utero, or when you're first 2 or 4 years old, and then they kind of route you on your path. And well, what if those tests only have certain parameters that they can't envision someone that has not only one characteristic, but multiple characteristics, and that the combination of things, the synthesis, is actually a very powerful, important thing. And I think that because I have multiple ways in which my weird smarts evidences itself. And I kind of think of it as like I have alter egos, I have different hats I put on, I have different powers that I bring to bear. But it isn't that I see everything only as a nail because I am a hammer. I think that I have multiple ways of approaching things, and that it's very like willing. I say, my default problem solving approach is not working. Don't obsess. Don't keep doing the same thing and expecting different results. A definition of insanity. Try something different. And if you don't know what else to try, at least try something different.
Yeah.
The fact that you have the ability to step outside of yourself is a really important thing for creativity and just experience of life. You know what I mean?
And just from my thinking, my experience, and this is nowhere scientific or anything, but that what you just said, this isn't quite working. Maybe I should do something else, look at it a different way. That switch to be able to change the way you're thinking is probably one of the things that keeps you from being classified as autistic. Because I think I could be wrong and I may have people correct me, but just the couple people I know that are autistic, they don't have that as much. Just that particular thing, you notice that this is how we solve it. We do it every time, and it's step by step. They're almost programmed. And it's funny you say the hive mind. It's funny you say the hive mind thing too, because they point that out in the Bad Batch episode, because all the other clone troopers are programmed to follow the orders no matter what. And that's why they kill all the Jedi. These guys, because they're deviants, they don't have the programming. So they're like questioning, this isn't right. And that's, they go off the run.
So, and is free will like a coding error, or is it actually something you put into someone in order to have it be so they can get past? I did a lot of stuff, as I might have mentioned, with artificial intelligence. And one of the things that we talk about when you're really deep in the conferences in the fields is you have traps within artificial intelligence. You have certain heuristics that you put together, and they operate very efficiently, but sometimes you hit a local maximum that is satisfying enough for your success conditions that you kind of can't break out of it without doing something radical. Introduce a mutation or change your success conditions in a way that you couldn't just start off with the higher success conditions, because it would perturb ways that the system would like never get to a solution, or that it would find false solutions. So it isn't only that you have to be able to, from the onset, figure out how you're going to solve something and then just go do it. You have to build in those feedback loops that say, okay, ordinarily this thing takes 40 steps to solve. I've hit a good solution, but from my understanding of situations like this, where there's this many variables, and I should be able to find a solution this many steps, but also the solution should be higher. The value of the win should be higher. So where am I getting screwed up, and what's the and sometimes it's like, how can I program into that? Sometimes all you want to do is introduce some randomizing factor that just is a little kick, a little thing to say, try something different. And then it breaks out of that pattern, or you'll see that things will continually, from having run many generations of many things, you humanize them. You can see, okay, this way of approaching this problem was kind of lazy. It got to a good enough solution quickly, and then it sat there. It didn't need to optimize. It didn't need to maximize. It just said, this will do. It's the duct tape and pipe cleaner solution.
Right.
And what if you really want to say what's the best for all the uses of the resources in this situation, you kind of have to weigh, how do I know I've maximized? Because then if it perpetually tries to get better, it really could be that it's incremental advancement, but also diminishing returns, and it will never stop. The asymptote will go down towards that x-axis, and it'll be, I can eke a little more out of this, but you're taking 10,000 steps instead of 40. I can't wait. I need a solution in an hour. I can't give you 10 hours. Right. So it was very cool to think about how things think, about how you build in feedback loops, or how you satisfy versus satisfice. And your ending conditions were often a very important choice, that it wasn't give me the absolute best or give me just enough. You kind of continually played with looking at the problem and saying, I really want a 75% of the way to the best solution here. And then you get inspired. Well, if I could make it to 75, could I make it to 80? Right. And you look for whether it gets, like if it gets linear versus geometrically harder, and you use math and statistics to say, all right, I seem to be going towards diminishing returns. And sometimes the coolest thing about those systems was you couldn't always be the planner, the intruder, the designer that would figure it out. You try to build in something into the system that itself is aware of. I can do better. I should be able to do better. I have past awareness that it's not just kind of like starting over each thing, tabula rasa. You kind of try to give it experience. And sometimes, you know how that is. You run a race and you say, I think I got a little bit more in the tank. I think I can do better. And you couldn't explain to somebody, you couldn't quantify, you couldn't, you just say, I'm not satisfied yet. And
Right.
maybe that changes between Tuesday and Friday. Friday I'm looking forward to knocking off. So this is good enough for today.
Right.
You know
And
what I mean? So
I think the autistic trait of that is not knowing when to stop, not knowing when your effort isn't enough. And I know that's not defining every autistic trait or everybody with autism.
right.
It's that just I want a little more. I can do more. Work on it again. Keep and that's just
Exactly.
one of the things. And so the one thing I've wondered with this is you were talking about evaluation and analysis.
Yeah.
That is one of the skills that gets you into Mensa. That's one
I
of the
think
things they
so.
really look at.
Yeah. If anything, being able to step outside of a situation and have the monitor function. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is kind of weird. Often while I'm working on something, I'm kind of looking at myself doing it. And like, are you running blue green? Are you running nice and cool? Or are you running hot and overreacting? And like, what are you missing here that would help you get into that effortless flow state of mind? Is it distractions from outside, or is there something about this system that is just so quirky that it's disturbing in itself, in and of itself? It's
Right.
got oddments, you know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
I,
So here's the question: is having autism or the autistic traits or whatever, are
yeah,
they deformities or deviants of what's quote unquote normal, or are they the evolution of where we're going? Two different ways of looking at it.
right. I'll tell you, right, I'd say in the last 20 years is the time that we have, as a society, started to say it isn't only a, a detriment to you. You know what I mean? That now they talk about people who are autistic is kind of a superpower. That
Right.
a lot of what you might have seen that we didn't call it that in Nash being able to do incredible encryption in his brain,
Yeah.
in the intuitive leaps that an Einstein or a Feynman or whoever else might be able to have made, that there is something to be said for. It's because they had that ability to hold more things in working memory. And I guess
Yeah.
these are kind of forms of intelligence, but that goes towards Asperger's and autism, that maybe there's a little bit of a sacrifice, but it's not so debilitating. Like, I don't know, Mozart, a lot of genius behaviors.
Yeah.
He couldn't stop himself from swearing. He had very many multiple immature things, almost. What's the Tourette's? You
Tourette's.
know what I mean? At least that's how they portrayed it in the movie. But I think I've read about that as well. But in exchange for that, he was writing symphonies at 6.
Yeah.
So his ability to immerse himself in the world of music and to not only do beautiful things he had heard before perfectly, but to be able to do innovations. One of the ways in which they knew Bobby Fischer was a chess genius was he wasn't just going by book. He continued to have what they call brilliancies. People have played certain openings, as you know, hundreds of thousands of times, and he'd be the guy that on move 17 would do something that nobody else had tried before, and everybody immediately starts looking, oh, that's a mistake. That's a blunder. No, look, 5, 6, 8 moves away, plies away. He saw deeper. He saw something and it isn't only based on the other guy might make a mistake because it's new and off book, that it's more, wow, he opened up a new line.
Right.
And I love reading about that kind of thing where someone can, and that's a lot of how you try to, back when they were programming computers to play chess like human beings, that's kind of what they tried to do, was either the look ahead and go deeper, be able to look 10 moves instead of 5. But after a while, it's all positional. You, at a glance of the board, you can say, what's my overall ownership of position, possibilities of attacks, value of my pieces. And like when you play simultaneous exhibits, a guy plays 40 people and just steps up to each board, glances, makes a move. That's kind of what they started to be able to do with computers, was that he isn't deeply analyzing every single one of these games and the amount of brain power that would take. He had that uh, gestalt way of looking at it. You know what I mean? That after you played a lot of chess, you kind of just this is kind of weird. I don't play chess anywhere near as frequently and as deeply as I used to. But already then I had that weird feel for there's zones of control. There's a little bit of synesthesia. There's colors here, and you want to watch out for what colors are their attacks coming for you and how you defend, and what attacks yours are and where they intersect, and how do you um, make more of the future possibilities go your way than theirs. And it doesn't have to be that there's one sure line. It can be that leisurely boa constrictor way of looking at, I am continually increasing my possibilities and putting him into more and more uncomfortable situations. So you might not be able to get all the way to Zugzwang, where they really have no good moves, but you're continually limiting their good options and expanding yours. And that if you have 2.5 hours to do that on the clock, and you can learn to do that quickly, you kind of will always win. You will always just kind of flow over them like water instead of stab them like with a spear. And that's, at least that's how I pictured it. And, that's why I try to explain how my chess mind started to work. And I don't know, I think I've told you I never pursued anything in my life with that thing of, I want to be the world-class guy, because what I always thought was, I'm going to play chess and I'm not going to know how to change my clothes. I'm going to be so obsessive that I might lose other social skills and stuff like that. And I kind of wanted to be a generalist. I wanted to have the world in me, not this very interesting niche in me.
Right.
So
and there's other games that we've got that a lot too. I know Colin, like the deck builders, he has a couple deck builders, the Legends and Ascension. And he basically took them to his room when he was off school for the summer and weekends, and he sat and he'd play a game against himself, each side, and then change the cards and then do this. And, well, what cards combo well? So it got to the point where it's like, no, I'm not playing Ascension because there's no point. The 5 cards to buy, the ratio. There's no point. But Dominion, which we all kind of like, and even Gina likes to play Dominion, but even that one, the first thing I do is I start reading all the cards. I'm like, okay, I want to get 3 of this. I want to get 2
That'll
of this.
That'll come in handy if I can collect these particular.
And I try and keep my deck very modified low so that I get those combos more often. I see the people every turn. Oh, I can buy 2 things. I'll buy 2 things. Oh, I'll buy these 2. I'll buy these 2. And they're like not getting combos because they have so many cards. So I know everybody plays a little different, but that evaluation is for that too.
Yeah. We it's kind of funny. We haven't really spent a lot of time about games, and not only what games do we like and not like, but about those things. I tend to, because I often, so we know really brilliant people like Steve, like Oriel, they're really good at understanding what the winning conditions are and how to move towards them, how to explain some of those things to others, how to not give away all your tricks, because if you play this a lot, then it'd be like your son, that they'll be able to. It's kind of like playing. They've already played all these games in their head, and you're just fodder for them. So, and what I always try to do is, especially when I'm playing with family and friends, I really like games that have a combination of all those things plus luck, so that it isn't only a matter of kind of just playing it out. That chess is very much like that. It's a known steady state game, and it goes off into combinatorial complexity very quickly, but there really isn't any luck involved. When you do something where you're drawing cards, rolling dice, whatever else it might be, you might have the best plans in the world for Settlers of Catan, but if you keep on drawing too much of one resource and whatever the other limitations we could start naming, you get kind of like, I'm going to do the best I can, but boy, this isn't working out like to the last 20 games I played. They kind of followed good scenarios that I like and I'm comfortable with. And I guess, I think we've talked about this a little bit before, once in a while, like I love playing a lot of computer games, a lot of dungeon crawl games. And one of the things that I discovered was, stop being always either the big brute, because that's kind of like what you look like, or the wizard, because that's kind of what you think like, but be the wiry thief. Be the guy that's got the first strike, be the guy that's more of an opportunistic like stealer than winner, if you will. And it was just cool to be able to, what they often talk about in books, I still hadn't embraced it enough until maybe the last 10 years. Take that opportunity to be someone else, to be your alter ego, to play. And I know it doesn't have to be like, oh, now I'm a pretty female character, or now I'm a dragon, or whatever. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be entirely things, but I think there's something to be found for. You know what I should do is I should just roll up my character randomly every time and deal with it. If I'm
Right.
going to be a half orc that is like, my charisma is 3, kids run screaming from me in the village because I am so ugly. You know what I mean? Instead of being the smooth talker, they can convince the innkeeper to give me the secret part of the. It's kind of cool to play against type and learn something from that. So,
When we play role playing games down there with some friends, um, one friend, we kind of pick on him, joke about it. He's always the same character, no matter what we're playing. He's got to be big, military, strong, fight. He's got the
okay.
same tactics for everything we ever play. And I do shit that just annoys him. Like I was a thief the one time, and
Okay.
we were in a really bad battle, and we were wounded. And he's like, "Okay, well, let's go to the inn, and we're going to stay in our room for 3 days and heal up." I'm like, "That is boring." I'm like, what fun is it that we don't have to worry about getting hurt because we're just go and heal up after every battle. And honestly, to me, that takes some of the fun out of it. There's no
Right. There's
challenge.
no risk.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. There.
So I said, well, I'm bored. I'm going to climb out the window and go search for some bread. And the GM is laughing because he knows I'm doing it to annoy my other friend. And my friends were, don't, what are you doing? Well, I was the worst thief in the world. I tripped going out the window and landed in front of guards. And let's put it this way, the ensuing battle, we burnt the hotel down, the inn. So he was mad at me. So he always made me go up front to look for traps while we're going down trails and
Exactly. And then
dungeons.
get it in the face if there is one. Yeah.
Well, for some reason, I never made my rolls. So they'd come walking by and I'd be hanging upside down in a trap. And they're like, yeah, we're not going to help you. Or I'd walk into the dungeon and fall through the floor in the trap. And he's like,
Right.
if we find you, we'll help you out. He's like, screw you.
Exactly.
Yeah,
We'll see you. We'll get you out of the pit on the way
right.
back out after we've gone adventuring.
Yeah,
Exactly.
we played another game where we played giants. We were
Okay.
just all
Hmm.
giants. Well, I made my character afraid of the dark, not knowing that the very first thing that happened was we had to run into some caves.
Right. And
Yeah, so
that's
we're
very
trying to
good.
get away from dragons attacking our town, and I'm afraid to
Hmm.
go through the cave, and I'm holding a torch, and the dragons see me, and my friend's like, "Get over here! What are you doing?" I'm like, "I can't. It's dark." And I played my character like I should, but it
Yes.
really made for an interest. The thing is, to me, and I did this when I GM'd for my kid when they
Okay.
were younger. I,
Yeah.
I I wanted it interesting, and they still tell stories about some of those games of things that happened and the fun we had. It's
Yeah.
no fun when okay, it's the same battle formation. You cast this spell, and then you cast this one, and you cast this one. It's like those people that play Diablo, and they've done it so many times that they get into a battle, and the whole team is like, "I hit this, okay, I hit this, okay, I did that, I did," and it's the
Right.
same routine. That's boring to
It's
me.
funny that you would mention that. But no, I love Diablo. I've played that
Yeah,
for a long time, Diablo 1 through 3, and all the variations and stuff. And that's one of the ones, it was exactly where I first started to say, don't just play the wizard. Don't just play, like, try being the monk this time, where you're all about quickness and martial arts. And you know what I mean? Like, and well, one time I was like um, they introduced a voodoo doctor character, if you will, and that it wasn't you in the battle. You were continually summoning familiars and animals and things like that.
uh,
And so, like, send my poison spiders at them. And so it's like I usually don't be the guy, the kind of the puppeteer in the back, sending my forces in. I'm always like, well, I'm going to be in the battle with you because I'm your leader, but I'm one of you. And it was very fun to just play. Okay, what if I put my manipulator hat on? That I'm going to exhaust them, with all the troops I'm going to send against them, and then I'll be the one that goes around the battlefield killing them with the stiletto.
right.
You know what I mean? The visual of that is terrible to me, and yet they are very good in Diablo of making each one of those character types have a very different experience, so that when you're the crusader, that you're supposed to be like, chaotic. I'm sorry, lawful good, and that you get power because you really have only done good things. You're never going to steal anything. It's very cool that they have played to the strengths and the weaknesses of each of those various different things. And then as I play each of those types, it's like, so where did I have the most fun time there? Sometimes when I was me and I played it really well, and other times where I didn't know what to do, but it doesn't really matter. I'm supposed to be chaotic. Let's just try
Do
something.
something. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, I have that same philosophy. Like Gina gets irritated with me whenever we take pictures because I always got to
Okay.
make some face. And I'm like, but you tell me how many pictures you take where everyone's standing and smiling nicely that you remember. What was this for? I don't remember what this was for. But when you're
Okay.
doing something else, you
A
remember
little
what the picture's
goofy.
for. That's my point. My favorite, man, I remember back in the 90s playing, I was a barbarian with very low dexterity but high charisma. So I was like, okay, I'm Fabio. And so I was playing Fabio. So every time we'd be getting
Yeah.
attacked, I'd jump up and I will smite thee and go running at him. And my same friends like, what are you doing? They outnumber us. And I'm just like, and so I just played him like a big doofus that, his hair's
Right.
flowing brilliantly. Much fun.
Another thing, it's kind of funny. I I oftentimes do it as a solo activity because I'm going to stay up until 3 in the morning and etc. But once in a while, not so much me. In college, I belonged to a couple of groups that played D&D. But you're in college, and you fit that in amongst other things. My younger brother had the wonderful experience of he had a party. The half a dozen of them that would gather at their house, his house, and maybe it was even 8 of them, but I think it was 6. And they played campaigns all through the summer. They worked their way. I'm going way back now. TSR used to have all the various different, glacial rift of the frost diet jarl
Yeah,
and things
yeah.
like that. They had probably 15 different things that built to this big climactic thing. And they, I think, not everybody DM'd. Maybe 1 or 2 of them did, but they did play constant characters. Thaddeus was the thief, and et cetera, et cetera. But after a while, the DM gets really good at, well, I know what each of these guys is good at, comfortable at, and he started designing things that in particular would say, if you did what you're going to do kind of on autopilot, it'll work out bad for you. And so he made it that it had to be a little bit trickier and a little bit more the party talking about and saying, don't just rush into battle. You know what I mean? It might be that that's not running out for food, for going to get some bread to break the boredom is a different thing than just don't be impulsive, don't think you know everything that's going on. So a quick story, I think this is from Bruce's game. It was you go into a room and there's dust, really dusty, ash, whatever, everywhere. There's a huge treasure chest overflowing with treasure, visibly a good one, inside of a big glass box. And as you bump it and stuff like that, you find out that it flows like water. So it's like, okay, they cast spells. Well, what if it's not water? What if it's acid? So you check for that, and you check for traps on the chest, and everything that they could do. It's just going to be a matter of tank, break the glass, get the treasure out. Well, they do that. The water flows out. What that was on the floor was a huge black pudding that a fireball had made into ash. And of course, when you put the water in it, it
Constituted.
reconstitutes it. And now they're all like hip deep in this, oh my God, my armor's deteriorating. Oh my God, it's eating me. And it just was, they spent so much time talking about the possibilities. And the DM must have been just like biting his tongue with, oh yeah, that, you check for that. No, it's not acid. And it was, there's a whole bunch of other stories that they could tell about
Yeah.
those perfect interactions and traps, and where they had non-player characters that they actually um, interacted with them in a way that the DM hadn't expected, but that the DM, usually either Mike or Bruce, they were so quick on the spot to make up more of the story, to be able to stay in character. And they had such laughs and they bonded so much as friends with, here's the time that it really was the brute force guy is the one that got everybody out of trouble. Here's where the thief was able to sneak behind the spider's lair and you weren't going to brute force your way in. So everybody had a chance to be the hero. But they needed all the party to be able to do, well, I took a lot of damage. Thank God our healer is here. Come on over, cleric, and help me out. And it couldn't have been a more ideal D&D adventure in my mind. The way that the originators must have pictured it is that the reason you created all those character classes is because you're going to need them all, and that they're all equally powerful at different times. And I don't know, man, I'm jealous of my not having had that cool experience that he used to tell me about. We talk, when I started to be at college for the summer, we'd have phone calls and he'd be like telling me the latest tales and just like, that's just so creative. That's just so much fun.
Yeah.
Oh man, can I drive home? Can I drive home and take part in the next game? I'll roll up a character. I'll be the noob. I'll be the pud. That you can take out there. And oh well, it was
I
very much fun.
remember when I GM'd the Star Wars role playing game in college. We had a group of
Okay.
us that for a couple years played Star Wars every couple weekends. And
Yeah.
my basic rule was it had to be dramatic like the movies and not, we're not going to sit there. This is one of my problems with playing with certain people is
Okay.
we will spend like that treasure thing 3 hours trying to make sure that there's nothing that's going to hurt us when we open it. I don't want to sit here for 3 hours. I want to move on and have a story and adventure. So that was the
Exactly.
rule. If
Okay.
the characters started sitting around discussing what they should do and all this too much, stormtroopers come around the corner, or your ship is getting towed away, or
Exactly. Force the
whatever.
issue.
Yeah,
Exactly.
or your droid suddenly starts smoking, and now the officials are coming to check out where the smoke's coming from, and it's like, what do we do? You're moving on. We're going to have a good night. So
That's very funny. I
so
do remember I was in one college game real quick.
mhm.
Sorry,
No, go ahead.
where
Yeah, yeah.
one of those things where you find things, and of course it's you're probably all starting off between like level 3 and 5. Well, he had a chart of like 100 different things, and of course, if you really roll the perfect 100, you get the list expands from these basic 10 to the next 20 to the 50 to the 100, and so early in the game, somebody found Thor's hammer, and it was just the game was over. You know what I
Right.
mean? It's like, okay, you met a golem, bonk, and it's dead. 60 hit points dead. And like it was such a he really beat the odds by doing this role, but it took all the fun away from the game when you become a god on earth. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Right. Yeah,
And
exactly. See, I would have done something like every time he did it, there was some negative reaction. So, like, suddenly he grew buck teeth, and
right,
or
drains life force or
yeah, or it
something
was
like
glued
that.
to his
That's right.
hand, and it started weighing 50 pounds more. So now he couldn't drag it, and they had to, just
So
something crazy.
I wonder if that would have played out if we would have played longer, but I don't think that DM had anticipated that really long odds roll happening. You know what I mean? So it
Right.
was like, well, why don't we start another game instead of playing this one? Because this is now no fun. All the rest of us are just like little ants, shadows going along with this
Right.
huge guy.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Oh,
So,
you know what would have been great? That it's really actually still owned and in someone else's control. And
mhm.
so every now and then it would just suddenly go away and drag him along with it. And
Right,
so it's
exactly,
like
because Thor
crashing.
was calling it back.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So speaking of Thor, oh man, what a great segue. The new
There he goes.
Marvel trailer.
It's overwhelming
Oh
with
my
how much cool.
gosh.
I actually had to take notes, and I don't. We don't have to not miss anything, but like just when you go to the list of what's coming out through like 2023, it's not like two or three things.
Oh my
It's like
God.
20.
They're
It's like
making up
two
for the
dozen.
last 2 years.
And it's not only movies, of course. There's TV shows and there's animation and there's all kinds of stuff. And so we I don't know how much you want to jump around, but like
Everything,
from
whatever. Let's go.
exactly, there are a couple of things, as you know, that were supposed to be released during COVID 45 year, and it didn't happen. So they put those into the schedule, and not necessarily the first ones are going to be the ones that they already have in the tank. Like Morbius was supposed to come out a year ago,
Yeah.
but that's not the first one to be released. From what I understand, Loki is going to be the first movie out in theaters, and not
Is
wasn't
it? I thought
necessarily
it
the
was a
first one.
TV show on Disney.
Oh, I think you're right. I'm sorry. Exactly. So I didn't take it. I didn't take deep enough notes to help me. You know what I mean? As we talk through
That's
these
what we're
things, you
here
probably
for.
have all the details. But that's I love the fact that um, as I have been, as we mentioned, I got HBO Max, I got Disney because I have my phone in my home, and I didn't have to pay anything for them yet. And I'm trying to just shrink everything in I can so that when it comes down to it, am I really going to have the same as I used to have with a huge cable bill? But I got away from it because I
Right.
cut the cord. But now I'm nickel and dime.
Your investments
So
better stay up.
right. Runaways was very cool. Agent
Yeah,
Carter was very
I
cool.
like that.
Doom Patrol, that kind of stuff. And actually, I take it back. Runaways was moved slower than I wanted it to. I thought the comic books were really interesting. And it's funny, the first big surprise, no spoilers, is like the whole point of the series, and it's done by the second episode. And so then it's more of a chase thing instead of a mystery. There are some things that they were good, but only specific parts of them were good.
I
You know what
think
I
they
mean? So
were trying to make Runaways too much of a teen angsty thing, which I understand it's a teen book. They're all that age
right.
and stuff. But I think they went too much trying to do the teen angsty stuff, kind of like all the whatever that's out there, instead
Right.
of enough of the story with the superhero stuff. I don't think they got the right balance with that.
That's a good I would agree. That's really good analysis. That I want it to be that there's some of each of those things. I don't mind people like they used when they made fun of in like not Brandak about the early X-Men. That there was a lot of battle, but there was also all those dreamy thought balloons where Scott and Jean were always like kind of edging towards being in love, but they couldn't say anything to each other.
Right.
And so it's like, how much of that? You're really going to play that every single issue? You know
Right.
what I mean? So, if you're going to be a man of action, then act. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
ask her out. How about that? So,
Yeah.
I just Loki, Tom Hiddleston,
Hiddleston.
right, is so perfectly suited
Oh
for that
yeah.
role. One of the wonderful things they've done is they discovered like not only one good Spider-Man, but multiple good Spider-Man. And Robert Downey Jr. was so great as Tony Stark. And again, that malevolent glee that he puts into Loki is just
Yeah.
so
And
good. It's,
the great thing is, and I love them for this, is the by
sorry,
Colleen.
my wife is she's got yeah, we now, because we're both vaccinated and can go out, my wife has an appointment.
Oh
So out
wow.
of the house, oh my god.
So the movies are wonderful, and I love that they've started branching out a little bit. So it's not like, oh look, another action superhero movie. The
Hmm.
TV shows lately have been off the charts, fantastic. They're not doing. They're doing. I mean, Agent Carter was the cop show,
Right,
and now they did Winter Soldier, which was the buddy cop show, and they did WandaVision, which was wacky,
right,
but such a good underlying story. But
like Twin Peaksy, where it's like, what's
yes,
going on here? You know what I mean?
exactly.
Like the first 3 or 4 episodes were just trying to like, what I thought I
Yeah.
was getting
And
something, this isn't.
you could have never done that in a movie successfully.
I
And
think you're right.
Loki is a time travel sci fi show with comedy. I mean, it's like, oh my
Exactly.
God, how great is that? But
I
anyway,
really have no. So and from what one of the things just from reading the blurbs, that of course it isn't only that each of these has this main character. They've been so good about getting the supporting cast built for each of these
yeah,
shows. So there will be the arch nemesis, the wisecracking sidekick, the love interest, whatever else it might be, and that they're very good about playing everywhere with that. Oh my God, is your unrequited love because you are lost in time, or is it because one of you turned into a robot, or you know what I mean?
right,
It's very
right,
fun to see all those variations.
right.
Um,
So here's when I watched the trailer. I was really awestruck, first of all, because they nailed everything so perfectly. I really think Marvel took a note from Apple advertising, because think about all the Apple commercials, especially at Christmas. Not once are they shoving a product in your face, selling a product. They are making some emotional thing that it's almost like a mini story, like the Frankenstein one where he was singing and he did
okay,
light bulb, or the one a year or so ago with the kid looking like he's ignoring everybody, is staring at his screen, but the whole time he's taking pictures and he's making a family video. And that's like,
that
oh, and
exactly.
then everybody wants an apple. That's what they sold. This Marvel trailer, they had some issues. First of all, we haven't had a movie in 2 years. So
Yeah.
people are like, okay, I watched 10 years of it. We hit the end. I don't care about the rest of this crap. I know people were like that generally. And
Okay.
so they had to overcome that. People for 2 years haven't had Marvel. They don't care, honestly.
Right.
And they have some new ones coming out. They can't keep doing the old stuff because they'll lose it. So they have these new characters, but nobody knows a thing about them. Nobody knows who Shang-Chi is. Nobody knows who the
That's
Eternals
right.
are. And if they don't know, they don't care. And if you want me to prove that, just go look at DC for the last 8 years. I mean, nobody cared about Suicide Squad and it kind of flopped. Well,
Right.
they had to some way get people emotionally invested back in the movies and get these new characters into that pocket of those feels. They did it masterfully. They start the trailer off with Stan Lee. Everybody's crying at this point already.
Exactly.
And then they showed
We
the
missed
audience.
who's that.
Yeah. And then they showed the audience reaction to everybody watching Endgame to remind you what you felt like when that was there, that you wanted to cheer, and the audience
That's
did.
right.
And they picked the perfect part where Steve, Falcon says on your left. And it's like, oh my God, we were watching it. And Gina's like crying in the chair and cheering. And it's
Right.
like, it's a 2-minute trailer. So they got you feeling so good in remembering this. And then they're like, so let me show you these new characters coming out. But they did it very subtly and stuff. So now people are like, oh, I can't wait to see all those. And in their
Right.
head, Eternals and Shang-Chi are Marvel. They're great. They were, it was masterful. I applaud it. I'm not a marketing guy, but I know a little bit, and that was so well done.
Yeah. I honestly I agree with everything you said. They really showed that the Marvel formula, and it's not really that's the wrong term. The Marvel ethos for how they make these things is to give you that emotional connection,
Yeah,
to give it so there's characters that you like. Back in the Siskel and Ebert days, their constant criticism was, "I never cared about anybody in this movie. Why would I watch the movie till the end if I couldn't care less about the
right,
outcome?" And immediately you're like, okay, you know, uh, um, this one's fighting to save the world. This one's an orphan trying to find his way. This is, you know what I mean? There's the broad strokes that Marvel have always had of tap into archetypes. This is the Jekyll and Hyde story. This is the Romeo and Juliet story. This is the young man bound for adventure, the hero's journey.
yeah,
And so there it might be that there's variations on a theme, and one of the things they're doing wonderfully is, well, it's not a young man, it's a young woman bound for adventure. Or it's, if you're looking for a hidden land, what happens when the hidden land loses its king? Well, Wakanda. And you know what I mean? They're really canny about keeping you emotionally, and there's stakes. There's real stakes that it's not just, I don't know, the DC comic books and maybe the universe are always had that sense of it's just another episode. They're going to hit the reset button. Everything starts over next time and nothing changes. You know what I mean? And that might be successful for Seinfeld, where one of the themes was no learning, that it really is just vignettes of this group of people. But Marvel always had that. When someone dies, they're really gone and people grieve.
yeah,
And then someone rises in the underworld to fill that guy's place who died. And that there really were ramifications from the past that kind of echo into the future. And I love seeing that. So when you find out that, like, I don't know, Doctor Strange is going to be in the multiverse of madness or something
yeah,
like that. And when they expand the Marvel universe in the way that that's going to do, that they show the multiverse and that they show that there are alternate versions of various different people, and that you think of, well, so that traumatic event that this character went through, it could have gone either way. They could have gone good or bad. They could have gone mighty, or they could have gone, I'm going to draw into my little shell. And so there's going to be so much resonance throughout the Marvel universe for like what are
yeah,
the motivations behind these characters, and that we really might see some of those alternates. There's going to be Kang the Conqueror is going to be in one of these, and like I think I've always thought they've handled him really well in the comic books, because at first they just showed him as another conqueror with like a utility belt that can do things because he's from the future. But then they really started to show that power of time travel. Like you could grab people from the past and bring them here. You could grab things from the future. You could. The one I always loved was they had a whole series a year into the Avengers where him and the Avengers have a big fight, and then the Avengers, like, they need some time off to lick their wounds and heal. Well, Kang goes into the future, takes a year to heal, and then comes back 10 minutes after the battle. And so it's like, how do
nice.
you fight someone that never wears down? He has all. So I'm looking forward to, like, I'm trying to think what else I saw. The Eternals, like you said, that's a whole nother, when Jack Kirby brought that into the Marvel Universe, it was a huge expansion of, well, what if there's been this secret race, both the Eternals and the Deviants, that have been kind of either interacting with or controlling or bedeviling humanity for all this time? And does that have an explanation? Does that fit into the reason that, Peter Parker was bitten by radioactive spiders because somebody shoved him? You know what I mean? You don't know. What are
Right,
they going to do to kind of play that retrocon game of, like, it really could be that what we think we knew wasn't always the truth. And if
right.
they're clever about it, it's going to be so satisfying.
and
You know
and,
what I
and
mean?
I feared for it because Colin loves the Eternals, and I'm like, I'm just afraid because they're going to like drop them in, no introduction, so it's going to tank, and then they're going to
Yeah.
do what DC does. Well, scrap everything. We can't do any of that. But I think they're bringing it in very well, and I. What I would have loved, and I know this is actually going back to when they were created,
Yeah.
they're Celestials and the Eternals. Man, that really could have come across as like a Lovecraft cosmic horror type thing, and that would have
That's
been, I
true
would have
too.
loved that. It's
That's
still
right.
good, but
Right. We're here to either experiment and advance humanity. And if we don't like what's going on, we're just going to like rinse that petri dish out and we're going
Right.
to start over. And what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you guys are the sense of scale of we think that we're important in the universe, but once you go really cosmic, no,
Right.
there's all kinds of things going on, and there's a planned secret invasion thing where it's like,
Yes.
really, we're going to have the Skrulls, and they're going to have been invading humanity for a long time,
Well,
and you really can't trust your neighbor, like Red Scare type stuff.
they've already
Oh my,
started that. I mean, they were in Miss Marvel, and
right?
they had the one end credit scene where they had the Skrulls talking. So,
Exactly.
I know that's coming. The problem with the Eternals that they have to work on and overcome is all of the Marvel characters have flaws. They're very human to us.
Right.
Even I mentioned that when Falcon took over as Cap. Spoilers for anyone.
Right.
uh, uh, he's just a normal guy. He doesn't have serum. He's
Hmm.
just trained. He's got wings that are,
Right. And actually, I
mechanical.
think, yeah, he's been offered it and refused it because, anyway, what I
Yeah.
mean? That
So,
he's,
but the Eternals, they're gods. How do you make gods interesting? They have to have something that's a flaw because we can't relate to them and people don't care. And I think that's one of the things, again, DC was trying to overcome, but they haven't
yeah.
given it enough chance.
So I'll tell you what, I can give you some analysis that I thought the first time that I read the Eternals as a comic book. They're very much based on the Greek pantheon.
Right.
Zuros is Zeus and Makari is Mercury and all that and I guess Greco-Roman because Jack Kirby played fast and loose with which was the Greek or the
Right.
Roman equivalent. But when you read Greek and Roman mythology, they're not just gods, all wise. They're very petty in
Oh,
their
yeah.
humanity. They're very jealous. They're very boastful. They're very everything. And so it's kind of like the idea of a God being omniscient, omnipotent, and omnigood. No, they just happen to be very, very advanced humans, but they sure have all the emotions. And in this case, having a fit means you might set off a volcano instead of just kick a dog. I
Right.
shouldn't say just kick a dog. Sorry, dog lovers. But you know what I mean?
Oh,
It,
you're
it
going to
really
get it
is that.
now.
Exactly. I love dogs. You know I love dogs, everybody.
All
So
those people that got after Keanu Reeves after the first John Wick movie, now they're all going to come after you.
it's I think what we're going to see, like they've done also an interesting job with the Eternals. I'm trying to remember exactly. Because there's all these new characters. There's all these chances to put in existing known actors and not, and so there's a whole bunch of new names, people that I don't necessarily recognize. But I'm scrolling down. It's like, oh, Salma Hayek is in there.
Yeah.
Okay, is she going to be like an enchantress type one, or is she going to be a battle, a Wonder Woman type? Where she's a warrior.
Right.
I don't remember the exact name of the character, and so I didn't get. Oh, that's how they're going to use her. But it'll be a very interesting thing to have them play out. Another thing about the Eternals is that it's not the Greco-Roman gods were really big on sibling rivalry, on marriages and marriages not working out, and jealousies. Zeus screwed around on Hera 100 million
All the
times,
time.
had all those demigod bastard children. And so, how much are they going to put that in? That if you've got an eternity to live and you decide that you need to dally, and you start seeding yourself in humanity, how many of those
Right.
byblows are we going to have occurring where it'll be very interesting to see how they weave that into human history and say, oh, that's what was going on. Heracles, was actually a half god. So that's, I don't know. That'll be very interesting to see how they play that out. And there's got technology that, in fact, this is a little bit of a segue. They have technology far advanced from human beings. And so what if that got out? The whole prime directive part of Star Trek was always, you can't leave a phaser behind on the planet because that will change the course of
Right.
civilization. Well, Armor Wars is coming up where they
Yeah.
talk about what happens with Iron
Right.
Man when some of his technology gets out, and they're not all benevolent. And then did you build intellectual property containment into it so that you could turn it off from a distance? No, if they defeat it'll be very interesting. So much Marvel comics in general, have always been not only a look into the future, but a reflection of the times. And so, whatever we are worried about currently with cyber warfare, with intellectual property, you're going to see a lot of those things played out
Yeah.
with, wow, that was built to be good, but the law of unexpected consequences would say something's going to go
Well,
wrong.
we already had some
So,
problem with some of Tony's ideas with Ultron. I mean, it didn't go
so
as
yes,
planned.
they've set the stage for that too. That even
Yeah.
though you're really a smart guy, you're not always a wise guy. You're not
Right.
always a perfectly seeing into the future. Even if you're a futurist,
and,
you're seeing probabilities, not certainties. You know what I
and
mean?
and
So
Tony's character in the movies is, he always says he wouldn't, he would not be Cap and sacrifice himself for everybody, but he's the only one that does it. Like every movie, that he'll sacrifice himself, and in the end, he's the one that saves everybody by sacrificing everything. And
exactly.
his character arc is just fantastic in the movies.
Yeah.
So,
You know what? I thinking about that a little bit. There's something a little bit what we talked about. If you're true to your character and you can't help but act that way, it really isn't as noble as choice. If you really are that you have in you both the hero and the scoundrel, and that you had it in you to run away, and you don't do it, you stand up when it really matters. That's cooler somehow.
yeah,
It's really
absolutely.
well. Sorry, comic books affect me.
Well, but
So
that was this whole thing. I mean, watching Endgame, everyone was cheering, and I mean, like I said, Gina was sitting there crying, hearing Stan and seeing Endgame again, and she was cheering. I'm like, oh my god,
yes,
it's a 2-minute trailer. We've seen all this before. So that's what I mean. If they couldn't have done that and got you to feel that way, they would have had a tough road ahead of them.
absolutely.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm excited for the next 2 years of what
Yeah.
they got planned.
Another thing that I'd like to see was often liked generational things, where they had the Justice Society became the Justice League.
Yeah.
I know that's DC, but let's go here. Fantastic Four started to have, well, they're going to have kids. What's going to happen with their kids? X-Men had, that there's variations on their powers based on the future, the past, interbreeding. Hawkeye is one of the movies where it's not going to be only Hawkeye who you know from the Avengers movies. It's the young lady Hawkeye
Right.
that she's just as skilled. And there's actually that wonderful, like, father-daughter loving but bickering, you know what I mean, trying to find your way in the world, trying to protect her, but you can't because, you know what I mean, it's like they another often told tale that they found a way to bring it into the superhero world. You know what I mean? Like when
Right.
they went home to Hawkeye's home and had all the heroes are standing around and she's like, would you like some pie? It humanized things so well
Yeah.
in a way that they really aren't human. They aren't heroes all the time. They have to have some downtime. If they're married and their spouses aren't powered,
4
they've had to
kids.
deal with. He doesn't go on a business trip. He goes on a cosmic escapade and he might not come home. And so it's very cool to see what the strength of those characters that can deal with. He has, with great power comes great responsibility. So I can see why he has to do what he does. And yet, please don't take him from me. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
so that'll be cool.
You mentioned the multiverse, the Doctor Strange thing.
Yes.
And on top of that, they've got Ant-Man and Quantum Mania, and we know he's gone
Quantumania.
into the quantum world.
That's right.
So obviously, they're trying to open this up, like you said, to other worlds. We could get other versions. So
That's right. Not just big cosmic, but there's plenty of room at the bottom
yes,
as
and
famous
that's
science fiction.
exciting. But are they going to like overdo it too much and kill things? That's the danger. They probably got to be real careful because
Yeah.
we could do Spider-Man Noir, we could do Miles Morales, we could do Spider-Gwen, we could do
Right.
just
The next Spider-Verse animated movie sure looks like it has all the Spider-Man, Spider-Women, Spider-Everybody
yeah,
versions, the Spider-Verse. And so not only can they are, and
yeah,
like, how are they going to keep that continuity where it's not just, all right, just do anything you want? You know
right,
what I mean?
yeah. I mean, if they could go to another universe and bring Captain America back, well, that changes things. And would we want
I
that?
agree.
Would he be more like U.S. Agent or somebody like that? It's
Right. I'll tell you, it's interesting that you talk about that because both Marvel and DC have done that. They had gotten continuity so convoluted, they had so much time travel, alternative history, variations on a theme, different dimensions, that they have built to a big thing. The collapse of the multiverse, the final crisis, the secret wars, whatever else it might be, as kind of a way of clearing the slate sometimes. And then they start a new universe. They start a different universe, and they have variations on, well, now don't worry, the Hulk isn't as powerful as he once was. And so there'll be a little bit more risk for him. I don't know. I hope that if they do that in the movies, that they play it out over years so that you get a chance to build to, we have established characters and they really have histories, and that guy getting erased from reality, that's really a big thing.
That
That's
would,
not just,
yeah,
it really has to matter. Like, when they did the finger snap and people went to dust, you wouldn't have had anywhere near the emotional impact if you hadn't had Spider-Man in movies already for 25
yes,
years.
exactly.
You know what I mean? So
And that this trailer would not have been able to be made 8-9 years ago. It had, now's the only time they really could have done it. And
yeah.
um drew a blank. Oh, so you could do something like American Horror Story, where they get this new universe, but they change all the characters and their abilities. Maybe like Amalgam or something like that, where they blend.
See, I wonder about that if they because when they look at here's this amazing vault of intellectual property that we have, and instead of us having to come up with something new, we could just say what worked and what didn't out of every time that Marvel had a series of crossover annuals each summer. Let's see, Atlantis Attacks, only so good. The Skrull Secret Invasion, really good. The Norman Osborn, Shield becoming Sword. There's all kinds of ways that they could say, we already have sales numbers. We already know what people really bought into. They must have. I suspect that when they did Civil War, they really said, what's the event in all of Marvel continuity that really was an opportunity to bring everybody together and to have everybody take sides. And it wasn't just, there's how many superhero battles where they're both after the same villain, but they bump into each other. And for some reason, they're suspicious of each other instead of cooperative. So they have a little bit of a fight. Well, Civil War, the stakes where they were, are you about freedom or are you about order? Are you about, vigilantism or about trained and control? And that it's all the variations on that. There's not just one way to think about that. So I wonder which of, like I said, that series of, as I go through my comic books while I'm going through the vault, and I remember, oh yeah, that was really cool, where the first Secret Wars series kind of okay, second one not as good. If they're going to do a Secret Wars things with the Beyonder, which is such a crap name, that I hope that they embrace the good things out of the first series or out of both series, and not just have it be, the whole point of that was to introduce the symbiote costume. Well, they already have Venom in this universe, and so they, who knows, they do have that ability to like pick and choose amongst all of Marvel history and see what has worked, and hopefully not only just what I just read something about this, that one of the cool things I love about all the TV and all the movies is instead of just going, and some of the early movies were seeing played out what I already knew. And every time that they've done something different, that there was a different origin, a different villain, a different first meeting, different love interest, it's kind of cool to say, okay, I don't know. I want to be surprised. I want to be much more involved in figuring out what's going on instead of just seeing it play out. So same with like Walking Dead. You know what I mean? When they diverged from the series within like by the fifth issue, the fifth episode, it was different. It's like, okay, I don't know if they think that they're correcting it, fixing it, if they're just doing this because they can. But I like that I wasn't going to be like, oh yeah, I know what's going to happen. I like not.
Yes,
I like being surprised. So.
Yeah. So speaking of, did you watch Invincible yet?
Yes, I think I've seen the first 3 episodes.
Okay, I haven't watched it.
Boy, it did with the comic book. So far, it's done very well. The overall theme of a little bit of what Runaways was. What if you found out that the person that you thought you could trust most in the world maybe ain't that guy, and in fact, he's not only not that guy, he's not just like a drunk dad. He's like amazing megalomaniac.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that whatever that familial conflict of, do sons really have to have a fight with their dad before leaving home to prove they're a man? And what if that was, well, you could destroy the planet doing that? I don't think I'm saying too many spoilers, but it gets, and it, someone just pointed out that like the logo or whatever they use, it gets more and more blood splatters on it with each episode because the stakes keep going up. You're not just discovering bad guy stuff. You're discovering that he's willing to kill a lot of humanity, a lot of his fellow heroes. He's going to summon his cohort from another planet. Like, the stakes are really going up. It's very well done. I've always liked Robert Kirkman. He really has a great feel for what has gone before in comics and how can I embrace all the good things but put new twists in there so you don't know what's going to happen next. Kirkman's really good
Yeah,
at that.
yeah. And the other
So,
one is Garth Ennis with The Boys. I haven't
yes,
watched that. The comic's great, loved it. Haven't watched all of that, and we've got to catch up because Jensen Ackles is going to be on season 3, so we have to
I
catch
didn't
up.
know that. How did
Yeah,
I not know that? That's cool. Okay.
yeah, that's where
Man,
he went. I mean, Padalecki went to Walker, and Jensen went to The
okay.
Boys season 3.
Interesting. Okay. That's,
So
I really like The Boys, but that is another one. That's one of those series where I can understand going to almost any Marvel movie. The people who are not comic book fans could still have a nice time. There's a whole bunch of The Boys where people would be like, do you like this?
yeah,
This is
yeah,
terrible. This is
it's
incredibly
definitely
violent. This is incredibly perverse. How do you read these all the time? It like reflects badly on me.
Garth Ennis is not the one I would say, oh, you want to read comics? Here, read this. I fell in
Exactly.
love with the guy, absolutely. But
You don't give him the preacher. You don't give him the boys
oh
as an
God, the
introduction
preacher.
to comics.
Yeah,
Exactly.
no, you have to hit a level before you get there.
That's
You know,
right.
here I've got some Spidey super stories. So start with that. Justice
Yep.
League. Start with those. So
In fact, I know we've talked about this a little bit before. One of the things I love when you've read a lot of comic books is when you find someone that's really good at comic books, mythology, folklore, and they're able to draw from all those various different things and create a cool new work. So when you read Planetary by not Garth Ennis but Warren Ellis, it's really good at understanding what has gone before. The Victorian novels, the pulps, the comic books, and the horror movies, and tapping into various different parts of those in a way that it kind of that's all together. There's one big universe that all those things coexist in, and so you really might have Sherlock Holmes and Dracula
right,
and
right.
our heroes meet and what's going to happen because of that. And I love works like that. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? That there's the Iron Druid series is really great about that, of weaving various different mythologies and folklores together. And so if you're going to have the god of the hunt from this mythology have to have a fight with the world's oldest vampire, like who would win and how would they win and what would go on and what allies would they summon? And so that's just a great read because you can tell the guy has such affection for all those things and sprinkles good things in from everywhere. It's really well done. Thomas Hearn, Kevin Hearn,
Yeah,
if I
yeah. You
remember.
mentioned
Yeah,
that once before. I
yeah,
picked it
yeah.
up. I've got it waiting.
Okay, that's. I have been enjoying also, by the way, working my way through like my latest Lucas Davenport's, my latest Virgil Flowers, that fucking Flowers, and and the latest Sonny Randall, and you know what I mean. Is there anything more secure than having like a half a dozen books you can't wait to read?
Right. Yeah.
It's just such a nice thing to have the
Well,
stack, you
well,
know.
I got my latest feedback from JD Barker on some of my
Okay,
writing, and we're talking about prose and making it sparkle, and he gave examples in that, and he really kind of blew my mind because I was like, I
interesting.
see that. Oh my gosh, there's no real good books, no real good classes on moving your prose to the next level, and people always
Okay,
say, oh, King writes okay stories, but why is he so popular? Well, as JD said, it's the prose. He knows how to write it in a way that sparkles and draws you in. And he gave me some examples. Here's normally what would be written, but King doesn't write that. He writes this. And I'm like, oh. And I told him, I said, JD, that's perfect because my analytical brain would have never figured it out without concrete
interesting.
examples. But then I can read
Okay,
the examples and extrapolate that and how it works to move the same rule set to do with others. So now I'm like, okay, I've got a whole lot of practicing to do to, get
good
this
for
type of
you
thing
for
down.
getting those insights and having like now you can't wait to try it,
Yes.
yourself. That's
Yeah.
really
And
cool.
it's
Yeah.
really cool that I found him because people talk a lot about, and I hear this, use a different word and whatever. And I've gotten to the point where but it's not always just changing the word from I eyed him to I glared at him. That's not
Right.
always making it.
Thesaurus crap.
Yeah,
Exactly.
it's
Yeah.
just one word. Sometimes it's the whole sentence. And he pointed out to me how King would, and then I went back and read. So how King does certain things and to change. So I went back and I just opened up a couple books and started reading. Like, oh
Yeah.
my God, I could take these 3 paragraphs and write it as one sentence. But King made it so he drew me completely into it and made it 3 paragraphs. So he made it longer,
Right.
yes, but it was like drawing you in. You felt it more than just reading. He was
Exactly.
excited.
That's exactly like that. Talking about the senses, the internal response to it, the what you notice, and that it's not the omniscient overview. It's more like as you're walking along, you're trying to set a street scene. You don't tell them all about the street. You tell them about your experience of
Yeah.
what it smelled like, and then the leaves blew by, and then I saw a guy and he kind of looked at me, but he kind of what I mean. Like
Yeah.
you get to
So
give people your experience. That's cool.
I
Yeah.
don't know if you have a copy of Dreamcatcher. If you ever pick up a copy.
I do, but it's probably like in a box. You know what I mean? I can't just take it off the shelf. So
Anyway, so
but that's a good example.
yes,
Please.
The very beginning breaks every rule that us authors have been told about starting a story and capturing people's attention. The first 8 pages is just the one character, Beaver, at a bar with some friends. But I analyzed it and reread it, and I'm like, oh my God, this whole long section is just to get you to feel his frustration and his boredom and wanting to go talk to his other friends. And it was like, I am so seeing it differently now, and it's so masterful.
Very cool.
So I'm like, oh man, I got a lot of work to do.
That's very cool. One of the things I've always loved is authors that can write really good dialogue. I've always liked the Robert B. Parker Spencer books and Mike Lupica and various other successors. They really have captured that there's very little exposition. It's told from a certain point of view, and the conversations you get, like the snappiness of it, the smarm of it, the that people who've known each other for a long time, they have a certain like affection for each other or rivalry with each other or whatever else it might be that comes out in the dialogue they have, the curtness of it or the word choice of it or the, you know what I mean? And when they can carry the story along, letting you know kind of what's going on, but from how they're talking to each other or what they're not saying to each other because they're hiding things, it's a craft that's really, really well done by certain people.
Yeah.
So very cool.
So that's been on my mind constantly this week.
Okay. Very good. Good
right.
for you. I think, we've covered a lot of ground. Anything we have to cover? I am happy in closing. It's very cool. Like you said, not only are they've already run through main franchise characters, the Iron Man, the Thor, all that kind of stuff, Captain America. It's very cool that they're introducing lessers, Eternals, Shang-Chi, Moon Knight, that kind of stuff. I have been delighted to find out that some of the things I have in my collection that are really valuable are because they weren't Fantastic Four #1 that everybody wants. It's Moon Knight number 28, 32, whatever it is, the first not Moon Knight, Werewolf by Night that introduces Moon Knight. And it's like, it's very cool. Maybe I've talked about this before. When it occurs in the middle of a series, the print run is low. It's not even a well-regarded series that everybody's buying. And then when something big happens, like Thanos shows up, and now everybody wants Thanos. So I've had half a dozen of those things like, thank you for the Guardians of the Galaxy. Thank you for Moon Knight. Thank you for the new Ms. Marvel, the young Pakistani girl and different than Captain Marvel. And it's just, I'm delighted that my mind being a completist, like some of these nice things that I have in really good condition because I was buying from services and all that kind of stuff, not just from newsstands. I have really nice things for a lot of things that have just kind of like fallen in my lap. So go Marvel, go. Keep on making obscure characters into wonderful franchises because I'm going to take a trip to Paris with Colleen because you let me have a little bit of a valuable book because of this.
Two things on my closing.
Cool.
Colin just bought what he says is his first big investment book. He got is it a Marvel Presents or something? That's the first appearance of Hal Jordan as Green Lantern. He got one graded.
Showcase number 4.
Yes, that's it. Showcase. He got a good deal on it because it's missing the center pages. So it didn't get graded real high, but he says even that it's going up in value. So he wants to flip it in a couple years, and he says, I'll at least double my money, if not better. He says like 9.4 of that issue is going for like 21,000. So
nice.
it still go up. So that's the one. But I have a question. What are you going to do when you take that 5% of the valuable stuff and sell that off, and then nobody wants the other 300,000 comics.
I, I've already talked about this a little bit with Colleen. My intent is to cherry pick the collection, and then whatever's left, it's going to be like every week I put on eBay, hey, here's Daredevil number 171 to 180. You know what I mean? Here's some highlights of it. They're all in great shape. It might be that these aren't the most valuable ones, but if you want it, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I'll try not to sell them one by one, because that would be madness to do that amount of mailing, that amount of grading. There's all kinds of stuff that I'm going to sell raw as opposed to getting everything graded. I'm still working out in my head what's the value of a book that'll make it worth putting, as you might have seen from CGC prices. Oh, good Lord, they've gone up. There's so many things that I have that it's not going to be a particular flat fee. It's going to be some percent of the grade of the book. And if I intend to be able to turn around and sell that, then, well, I've already given CGC 30%. How much am I going to have to give the auctioneer? How much am I going to have to insure it and all that kind of stuff? So I will take the eBay, and probably not eBay, but Comic Link, Comic Connect, Comic Base. There's any number of dedicated sites, and I'll have to do a little bit more establishing a reputation to say, wow, that Al guy was really obsessive about condition. You can kind of trust that this is going to grade high. He just doesn't want to pay for the grading. So it'll work both for and against me. It won't be a known quantity, but people are going to see a little bit of that pig in a poke thing of, it could be bad, but man, it could be good. They often post things about, I went to a garage sale and they didn't know what they had, and I got this thing for $3 that's worth 30,000. And, you know, soon I might play the Antiques Roadshow card and say, so that's my intent. And in some ways, I know this is an odd thing to say, I don't know that I just want to sell everything because I don't need small money. It's kind of like, how about if I find a college that wants to have a big comic book collection for their literature of the 20th and 21st century collection, and I will endow them and give it for a big charitable donation. You know?
This whole time you've been going to the vaults, you should have been like recording videos and stuff that you're doing. You probably could have a video channel showing these books, showing you going through them, and have so many people hitting it, you'd probably be making some good money off the ads.
I wonder, but you know what? And this is like hardly like, wow, this is going to be out in the world, so I don't know why I think this is any secret. I never wanted to get to that place of, hey, everybody, let me show you my diamonds. And then why don't you find out what kind of car I drive and follow me to home and follow me to my storage locker? And I don't want to be attracting that much attention.
Yeah, that's
talking
very
about
true.
it like this is a little bit weird. And I'm not that paranoid. Really, one of the things I always liked about having a comic book collection was it wasn't like hit my home, steal the Hope Diamond, and make off with millions of dollars. You have to back a truck up to steal my fortune. You know what I mean? It's really so many, and they're not peeled out to where you could really say, if I grab this one box, that's the bulk of his collection. They're still all integrated. You know, it's. I think
you still could have held on to it to release in a couple years after you've sold off the best stuff.
And you're right. What I have done in an insurance frame of mind was every time that I had the table full of whatever that particular box was, you know, from B to A Z or whatever else it might be, I took pictures of various different things. And so you can see all the various different titles. And then you can see the, if you will, the relative height of stacks. You know what I mean? Where, wow, that guy really does have 100 Thor there, you know, that kind of thing. So I really might start posting and talking about that.
Yes, that's what you should do. Do a like an episode where, okay, here's Thor 170 to 218. It was this storyline, and you know, showing the book, showing the covers, and that would probably be of interest to a lot of people too.
I think so. The reason I haven't done it is because I have been trying to dedicate all my time to getting things cataloged. A little bit of I'm 60s. I'm young 60s. I can still lift all these boxes, but I don't want it to be, oh, I threw my back out when I hit N, and I still had O to Z to go. So there's been a certain amount of I don't think foolish urgency, but I don't know. It's kind of funny, a little bit of what we talked about. I wear different hats when I do these various different things. And going into the efficient processor, I don't necessarily want to be the writer then. I want to get as much as I can done here. And maybe I could have come home each night and said, so what did I work on today? And maybe write a little bit something up. But you know what's weird is I have some weird, like, I don't want to have homework. I I kind of don't want to have to feel the obligation. And once you start doing that, then it's like, hey, when's the next episode?
Exactly.
So there's a
Well,
certain amount of, isn't that weird? I don't think I'm
but
lazy,
but
but I
you've
don't like
got
to
the
be out of obligation. I suck at
right.
obligation.
But you've got the pictures and you've got some videos. So
Yes.
you could finish all the cataloging and you could do a video show, a YouTube show 2 years from now when you're all done and that's all you're working on. And you could do, and this is really popular right now, is doing a 20 episode thing, a 12 episodes, 30, and
Okay.
you make them all up, but then you just release them once a month, or you release them all at
Honestly,
once and people just plow through them.
you're really right. I have thought on variations like that. That when I first started the Smart Life, one of the things I wanted to do was just start to say, I turned out okay. Here's all the things I've read and played and listened to and done. And I wanted to share that in non hubris, but I think pretty objective. Um, these are the kinds of things that a smart person needs to do to exercise their smarts. I don't think I'm an intellectual only. I'm a goof, but I've always had, boy, 4-4 rock just isn't enough. Easy games are just not enough. I've always had to take it to the next and the third and the fourth and the fifth level. And so my collections are absolutely a record of what I started off with when I was young and where I proceeded to go into and where I really, like, if I had to give you my top 10, I'd be able to tell you here's why. A little bit what we talked about today. I love things where they draw on multiple sources and they show that there's really a knowledge and an affection for this type thing. Other times it's so innovative. Nobody else has done anything like this before. When you read the first cyberpunk book, it's like, wow, there's already a lot of science fiction, and yet this guy has this ability, you know what I mean, to portray something that's never been done. So I think that some part of what I've always wanted to do was, in my accomplished years, kind of go back and say, this hasn't been a wasted life at all. If you're looking for where you could read and listen and do these same kinds of things, I think that you would have a good life too. You know what I mean? And that so much. If I often have, what are my salient characteristics when it says tell me a little bit about yourself on a website, it's almost always funny, smart, curious, decent, big. Those are my 5. I don't know where I came up with that, but once I had them, it's like that really is a very good little the diamond, the facets of Al's diamond is funny, smart, curious, decent, big. And I think that would really inform, so much of how I'd write about it was, I love these comic books because they exercise multiple areas of that. And I watch these movies. And why didn't I watch certain movies? Because they just weren't enough. You try to watch a show and it's like, I'm bored in 5 minutes. Why would I keep going with this? I'm insulted in 5 minutes. I'm angry. I'm sad that this is even getting made in 5 minutes. You know what I mean? Disrecommendations as well as recommendations would be an important thing. Please don't read this. I'll save you the trouble. I read all the Stephen Donaldson books, Thomas Covenant the Unbelievers, and he fooled me twice. I read 2 of his trilogies, and they were like the least satisfying things I've ever read. So it's like, if I can save you 1,200 pages times 2, let me do that. Don't read The Power That Preserves. Don't read The White Gold Wheel. Oh my God, they're terrible. They're great ideas that went nowhere as compared to some of the other things. His prose doesn't sparkle, in my opinion.
Right.
All right. There.
Yeah, there we go.
I know we've gone long. Sorry.
Yeah, that's fine. It's good.
Okay.
Rain,
so I like your idea, and it really is. I'm not just like trying to fob you off. I think that's a great idea, that some part of when you've lived an okay life, it's nice to share that. It's nice to, the drinking from the fire hose aspect of today is people can go onto the website and they immediately see top 100 lists. And they're like, top 100? I don't know even where to start. Some part of how you ask things on the net nowadays is, hey, person that I already kind of value the opinion of, what else do you like? And I love getting those recommendations. If someone has a little bit of my taste, or I see how they come to their taste, that it has integrity, I love hearing what else they like. It's a much better lead than any bestseller list, any top top box office list. The box office is not the best by any stretch, as you well know.
Right.
You know what I mean? So,
Right.
anyway.
All right. Well,
Okay.
have a great week.
Yeah, you're saying take care, Stephen.
We'll do, man. Later.
You have been listening to the Relentless Geekery podcast. Come back next week and join Alan and Stephen's conversation on geek topics of the week.